A galaxy far, far away didn't start with Luke Skywalker staring at twin suns. It didn't start with Anakin building a pod racer either. The Star Wars timeline stretches across roughly 25,000 years of galactic civilization, wars, betrayals, entire empires rising and collapsing long before anyone ever heard the name Palpatine. 8 official eras make up that history, and the oldest one makes everything you've seen on screen look like yesterday's news, the Old Republic. The Galactic Republic was founded roughly 25,000 years before Palpatine ever sat down in that big evil chair and decided democracy had run its course. 25,000 years. Let that sink in for a second. Every single thing you've ever watched in Star Wars, every lightsaber duel, every Death Star, every I am your father, all of it takes place in the final dying breath of a civilization older than human agriculture on Earth. And for most of those 25,000 years, the galaxy looked recognizably like Star Wars, just more archaic. Philosopher monks who would eventually become the Jedi Order were discovering the Force, organized Sith factions were waging massive wars with actual armies, and the galaxy kept going through these brutal cycles of collapse and rebuilding. Entire civilizations rose, fell, and were forgotten, while the Republic just kept grinding forward. It's like if the Roman Empire never actually fell and was still around today, except it covered 1,000,000 planets and had laser swords. Here's the thing though, this era is currently the most canonically empty period in all of Star Wars. Lucasfilm kept the brand label, slapped the Old Republic on the official timeline, and then basically left the shelves bare. If you've played Knights of the Old Republic, if you love Revan, Bastilla Shan, The Mandalorian Wars, all of that incredible stuff lives in Legends, not canon. Lucasfilm hasn't restored any of it yet. The era is more invoked than it is actually depicted, which is honestly a little painful. What we do know canonically is that the Sith were believed to have been destroyed around 1,000 years before the events of the prequels, and after that point, the Jedi and the Republic entered a long stretch of relative peace. That's the version of the Republic that survives until Palpatine transforms it into the Empire in 19 BBY. 1,000 years of stability, which sounds impressive until you remember the institution had already been running for roughly 24,000 years before that quiet period even started. But if the Old Republic era feels ancient and mythic, the next era is where things finally start to feel golden. The High Republic. First things first, let's clear up a confusion that has plagued Star Wars fans for years. The High Republic and the Old Republic are not the same thing. They're not even close. The Old Republic stretches back thousands of years into ancient galactic history. The High Republic, that's roughly 232 to 100 BBY, separated by millennia, completely different vibes. And honestly, the High Republic might be the most interesting era Lucasfilm has built from scratch, because this is the golden age of the Jedi, not the stiff, politically compromised monks sitting in a tower on Coruscant that we see in the prequels. These Jedi are out there exploring the Outer Rim, building massive space stations like the Starlight Beacon, and actually being the heroic knights that everyone in the galaxy trusts and admires. They're diverse in ideology, vibrant in purpose, and genuinely beloved. It's the Jedi Order operating exactly how you'd want it to. But here's where it gets interesting. Lucasfilm didn't build this era just to show you a good time. They built it as a prologue to everything going wrong. The threats here are deliberately weird. The great hyperspace disaster destabilizes travel across the galaxy. The Nihil, a group of anarchic marauders, bring a brand of chaotic piracy that has zero interest in Sith ideology or galactic domination. They just want to burn things down. And then you've got the Drengir, which are ancient, sentient, carnivorous plants. Yes, plants that eat people, lurking beneath the surface since before the Republic even existed, which is, not ideal. All of this arrives through a massive, interconnected publishing initiative, spanning novels, comics, and reference materials across every age group. Lucasfilm is actively building this era in real time, and the whole project is designed to answer one devastating question. How does an order this good become the brittle, dogmatic institution that Palpatine dismantles with a single phone call? The answer is already visible. Even at its peak, the Jedi are being used as a tool of state power. Institutional overconfidence is baked into the foundation. Perfection breeds complacency, and complacency breeds exactly the kind of blind spots a Sith Lord needs. But if you think slow institutional rot sounds bad, wait until you see what happens when that rot finally catches up to them. Fall of the Jedi. The Jedi spent 1,000 years believing the Sith were extinct, 1,000 years of letting their guard down. Then in 32 BBY, a red and black tattooed nightmare named Darth Maul shows up on Naboo and cuts a Jedi Master in half. So much for extinction, but Maul was just the opening move. The real threat was already sitting in the Chancellor's office. Here's the thing about this era, it spans roughly 100 BBY to 19 BBY, covering the entire prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars. These films were mocked for years because they had Senate hearings and trade disputes instead of lightsaber fights. Audiences wanted action and got C-SPAN. But here's where it gets complicated, because those boring political scenes were depicting exactly how democracies die. With disturbing accuracy, Palpatine doesn't conquer the Republic. He makes it vote itself out of existence. He engineers the entire Clone Wars from both sides, controlling the Separatists through Dooku and the Republic as Supreme Chancellor. Every crisis, every emergency power he reluctantly accepts as part of a single strategy to hollow out democratic institutions. The man literally created the problem, sold the solution, and built the galaxy for both. And the Jedi walked right into it. They went from peacekeeping monks to generals commanding an army of clones, soldiers grown in a lab with zero choice about fighting. Nobody on the council stopped to ask, hey, should we maybe not use an enslaved army that appeared out of nowhere at the exact moment we needed one? Turns out, no. They just grabbed the lightsabers and got to work. Then comes 19 BBY, Order 66. A command hardwired into every clone trooper's brain activates simultaneously across the galaxy, and Jedi start dying everywhere. On battlefields, in temples, on remote outposts. Anakin Skywalker, the literal chosen one, marches into the Jedi Temple with a battalion of clones and murders children. Palpatine declares himself Emperor. The Republic thunders with applause. The whole thing takes less than a day. A 1,000-generation institution, wiped out between breakfast and dinner. But if the fall of the Jedi sounds bad, wait until you see what the galaxy looks like once the Empire actually settles in. Reign of the Empire. Here's the thing about the Empire. It doesn't start with Star Destroyers blowing up planets. It starts with paperwork. The Reign of the Empire era, spanning roughly 19 BBY to 0 BBY, is the most quietly terrifying stretch in all of Star Wars because it's not about war, it's about compliance. The Clone Wars end, Palpatine restructures the Republic into the Galactic Empire, and the galaxy just kinda adjusts. New management, same desks, different rules, and that normalization is the entire point. The Empire centralizes bureaucracy, restructures economies to create dependency, and launches a propaganda machine that recasts the Jedi, the galaxy's protectors for thousands of years, as traitors who tried to assassinate the Chancellor. Within a generation, most citizens genuinely believed the Jedi were the bad guys, which is, not ideal. But Order 66 wasn't the end of the Jedi Purge. It was the beginning. Surviving Jedi are hunted by the Inquisitorius, a squad of dark side agents trained by Vader to track down and eliminate any remaining Force sensitives. These aren't Sith. They're more like middle management with lightsabers and zero job satisfaction. Meanwhile, resistance exists, but calling it the Rebellion at this stage would be generous. Early Rebel cells are scattered, disconnected, and mostly running on fumes. Rebels gives us a ground-level view of what this looks like. Former clone soldiers, teenagers, smugglers, and one very tired ex-Jedi trying to survive under a regime that has eyes everywhere. Everyone is adapting. Nobody is free. Tano is the perfect case study for this era. A former Jedi who walked away from the Order before it fell, she moves through shadow networks under fake identities, helping where she can without ever picking up the mantle she left behind. She's not a rebel yet. She's surviving. And that's what this era is really about, not heroics. Survival. Moral calculations made under a government that calls itself the guarantor of peace, while quietly building the Death Star in the background. Oh, and if you've ever gotten confused by Imperial Era, Dark Times, and Age of the Empire all describing the same thing, you're not alone. They basically overlap. Just know they're all pointing at the same 19 years of quiet horror. But if you think quiet horror is bad, wait until that quiet ends and the galaxy finally starts shooting back. Age of Rebellion. This is the one, the era that started everything. The original trilogy, Rogue One, and the 5 years of galactic civil war that turned a ragtag group of rebels into the most iconic resistance movement in fiction. Spanning from 0 BBY to roughly 5 ABY, the Age of Rebellion is the beating heart of Star Wars. You already know the story. Let's talk about why it's actually insane that any of it worked. The Rebel Alliance had zero business winning this war. The Empire controlled millions of star systems, had a functionally unlimited military budget, and built a moon-sized superweapon capable of deleting entire planets from existence. The rebels were operating out of hidden bases with second-hand starfighters and a chain of command held together by hope and duct tape. And yet, in 0 BBY, a group of spies stole the Death Star plans, and what was essentially a suicide mission, handed them off to a farm boy from Tatooine, and that farm boy blew the whole thing up, which is, not ideal if you're the Emperor. But here's where it gets complicated. Rogue One and Andor have shown us what rebellion actually costs. Not every rebel is a noble hero making clean choices. Some of them assassinate people. Some of them sacrifice civilians for their greater good and then have to live with it. The Alliance isn't just good versus evil. It's desperate people doing ugly things because the alternative is worse. That moral gray zone makes the eventual victory feel earned rather than inevitable. The Battle of Endor in 4 ABY is where it all comes together. The second Death Star gets destroyed, the Emperor gets thrown down a reactor shaft by his own apprentice, and Darth Vader dies saving his son. Anakin Skywalker fulfills the Chosen One prophecy not through military strategy or force powers, but through a single act of personal sacrifice. The most feared man in the galaxy choosing love over power. That's the emotional climax of the entire saga, and it works because it's so small and so human in the middle of a massive space battle. 1 year later, in 5 ABY, the Galactic Concordance is signed. The Empire formally surrenders, and the Rebel Alliance transitions from insurgency to government. A group that spent years blowing things up now has to figure out how to run a galaxy, which sounds like a pretty significant challenge. If you think winning the war was the hard part, wait until you see what happens when they try to keep the peace. The New Republic You'd think winning the war would be the hard part. Turns out, no. It's everything that comes after that. Nobody knows how to handle. The New Republic era kicks off in 5 ABY with the Galactic Concordance, the treaty that formally ends the Galactic Civil War and tells the Empire to sit down and behave. The Rebel Alliance transitions into an actual functioning government, capital on Hosnian Prime, rotating leadership, decentralized authority, everything designed to be the exact opposite of the Empire. No more Coruscant hoarding all the power. Democracy is back, baby. Here's where it gets complicated. The New Republic deliberately scales back its military, smaller defense fleets, less centralized firepower, more trust in local systems to handle their own problems, which sounds noble. It is noble, but it's also the single worst strategic decision in galactic history, because while the New Republic is busy proving it's not the Empire, Imperial remnants are quietly regrouping in the unknown regions, building ships, training soldiers, planning a comeback that nobody in the Senate wants to acknowledge. You can see this playing out in The Mandalorian. Din Djarin walks into towns where Imperial warlords still run everything. New Republic authority extends about as far as whoever happens to be standing nearby with a badge. The central government technically won the war, but large portions of the galaxy didn't get the memo, which is, not ideal for a government that just dismantled most of its military. Then there's Luke Skywalker, spending this era rebuilding the Jedi Order from scratch. He gathers students, sets up a training temple, does everything right, and it all falls apart. Ben Solo turns to the dark side. The temple burns. Luke's students are either dead or gone. The guy who redeemed Darth Vader can't stop history from repeating itself. The prequel Jedi failed because of institutional arrogance. Luke fails because of one student he couldn't reach. Different reasons, same result. Fans have a legitimate grievance here. The sequel trilogy basically skips this entire era. We jump from Endor Celebration to the First Order exists, and the New Republic just got blown up with almost zero explanation of the 30 years in between. The Mandalorian and Ahsoka are filling those gaps now, but for a long time, this was the era fans knew the least about, despite containing some of the most important political shifts in the entire saga. The New Republic's greatest strength was its refusal to become what it replaced, and that exact refusal is what destroyed it. But if you think a government dismantling itself is bad, wait until you see what was being built in the shadows while nobody was looking. Rise of the First Order. The Empire lost the war, signed a treaty, surrendered, and then a bunch of its most loyal officers packed up their Star Destroyers, disappeared into the unknown regions, and spent the next 2 decades building something worse. The First Order exists from roughly 21 ABY to 35 ABY, and it's essentially a fascist military junta grown from Imperial remnants that nobody in the New Republic took seriously until it was way too late. They kept the aesthetic, the stormtroopers, the Star Destroyers, the obsession with black and chrome everything, but they made one key upgrade that's genuinely disturbing. Instead of recruiting soldiers, they raised them. Children taken from birth, stripped of their names, given designations, and trained as stormtroopers before they could form a single memory of anything else. The Empire was oppressive. The First Order was a cult with a navy. And here's the thing. The New Republic, new remnants existed. They just didn't care. The Galactic Concordance had forced the Empire to disarm and retreat, so as far as most senators were concerned, the problem was solved. Leia Organa was basically the only person in the entire government screaming that something was brewing in the unknown regions, and the response she got was a collective shrug. So she sponsored the resistance as a semi-independent military force, operating without formal government backing, because she knew the New Republic's refusal to act would leave the galaxy completely exposed. She was right. In 34 ABY, Starkiller Base fires. One shot. Hosnian Prime, the capital, the Senate, the Fleet Command, gone. A fringe group that most of the galaxy considered irrelevant just deleted the central government overnight. Now, the elephant in the room. A lot of fans feel the sequel trilogy never adequately explained how the First Order got this powerful. The films kind of just present them as already massive, already building planet-sized weapons, and leave the backstory to tie in novels, which is, not ideal. And then there's Snoke, positioned as the mysterious supreme leader before being killed, only for the rise of Skywalker to reveal he was a bioengineered puppet of Palpatine, who's apparently been alive on Exegol this entire time. Which raises a pretty uncomfortable question. Was the First Order ever independent, or just another Sith puppet state? The answer seems to be the latter, which either adds tragic depth or makes the whole era feel like a footnote in Palpatine's impossibly long to-do list. Either way, the thematic core holds. Fascist ideology survived total military defeat, went underground, rebuilt in silence, and came back to destroy the democracy that replaced it. Complacency killed the New Republic more than any superweapon did. But if the First Order represents what happens when a galaxy stops paying attention, the next era is about what happens when one person tries to rebuild from the ashes. New Jedi Order. Here's the thing about every single era we've covered so far. They all follow the exact same pattern. Rise, corruption, collapse, war, rebuild. Rinse and repeat for literally thousands of years. The Old Republic fell. The High Republic rotted from within. The Jedi got wiped out. The Empire replaced them. The Rebellion tore the Empire down. The New Republic got complacent. The First Order blew it all up. Every single time, the galaxy builds something hopeful, and every single time, it crumbles. And then there's this era, the New Jedi Order, beginning shortly after 35 ABY, following the rise of Skywalker. This era is defined by something that has never happened before in recorded Star Wars history. The Sith are gone. Not hiding, not regrouping, not pulling strings from a clone body on some creepy Sith planet. Actually gone. Rey defeated Palpatine, destroyed the Sith Eternal Fleet, and ended a dark side lineage that shaped galactic history for millennia. The Jedi-Sith binary that structured every era we just talked about, broken. Now Rey gets to build something new, which sounds great until you realize what that actually looks like. The prequel-era Order had thousands of members, temples across the galaxy, and centuries of institutional knowledge. Rey has none of that. She's essentially a one-person Jedi Order. Every decision about structure, philosophy, and training has to be deliberate rather than inherited. There is no, well, this is how we've always done it. There's just her. On the one hand, that's terrifying. On the other hand, she's arguably the most qualified person in galactic history to do this. She has the benefit of learning from every failure we've documented across this entire video. The High Republic's complacency, the prequel Order's rigidity, Luke's attempt that ended with his own nephew burning the temple down. Rey gets to choose differently. Whether she actually will is the biggest unanswered question in Star Wars right now. Now, if the name sounds familiar to longtime fans, that's because in the old expanded universe, New Jedi Order was a beloved novel series about Luke's rebuilt order fighting the Yuuzhan Vong. Same name, completely different context. There's currently zero indication that storyline will be brought into canon. And honestly, this era is the most thinly mapped in all of canon. It functions more as a promise than a fully realized story. Films focusing on Rey's rebuilding efforts have been announced but not yet released. We know the broad strokes. The details don't exist yet, which makes this the most interesting era in Star Wars for one simple reason. Every other era on this list has already played out its cycle. We know how they end, but this is the first time the galaxy gets to try without the Sith whispering in the background. The cycle that has repeated for 25,000 years finally has a chance to break. Whether it does is up to whoever writes the next chapter, and whether we'll actually like what they write, well, that's a whole different question. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.